Nighttime on Still Waters. This is NB 506812, narrowcasting into the night from somewhere on Britain's waterways. June 16th, Monday. Cresting the eternal now. The carp and I share the summer sun. It's midsummer's night. It's late, or it feels late, but there's still plenty of light in the sky. Even the night seems not to want to contend with the sticky heat. Little gusts of wind, sun-warmed, rattle the dry leaves and makes our fenders creak. This is the narrowboat Erica, narrowcasting into the shortest night. To you, wherever you are. Thank you so much for coming. It's really lovely to see you. The bow and the stern doors are wide open to the night, as are the windows and duck hatch. So let's enjoy the cool begin to flow through the boat. There's plenty of room, and there's always a special space for you. Welcome aboard. This week the temperatures have soared. It always makes boat life a little bit more challenging. It's always much, much easier to warm up a cold boat than it is to cool down a hot boat. And sun shining on a steel tube, even when the air temperatures are not really that hot, is a highly efficient way of making a boat uncomfortably hot. And this week, the thermometers have climbed into the 30s. That's the high 80s in Fahrenheit. Outside, particularly in the alder's shade, it's been really nice. However, if we're not careful, that could make the inside of the boat unbearable and dangerously hot for Maggie. But we've been prepared, and by using a range of fans and air coolers strategically placed around the boat, we've kept things, if not exactly cool, certainly not uncomfortable. And more importantly, Maggie has been able to keep cool. While the fans are good, once the temperature rises above a certain point, they start to turn the boat into the inside of a fan-assisted oven, making things even hotter, just blowing hot air around. And so the little USB air coolers are really great. They don't so much cool the boat down as to stop the temperature from rising. And we've learned to start them early in the day. That way the boat stays comfortable. And as we run on solar, requiring so many things to need electricity isn't really a problem. The sensible thing is to moor up in a nice cool and shady spot. But the problem is, when the air temperatures are so high, you still need to run the coolers, and shade means that solar panels don't work so well. So you find yourself working with compromises, trading off the cool shade with sun's glare for the solar. But today, the heat is breaking, and a couple of cold fronts have been sweeping over us from the west, bringing with them either the tease of rain or a few spots at least. Although it hasn't really got rid of that sultry, muggy feeling. And the hedgerows have taken on the hazy, dusty look. Once glossy leaves, now filled with gritty dust and pollen. Shabby chic, wabi-sabi. The air hums and buzzes. And yesterday evening I could hear someone flying a drone nearby. I wasn't surprised. It was a good evening to film the scatter of wood and patchwork fields below us. Evening sun, long shadows. And I kept looking up, but I couldn't spot anything. It continued to zizz and zip, climbing and then descending. And then I realized it was a bluebottle fly, all bumbling eyes and lightning flash blue. The sun and the heat have meant that the fish are rising. Minnows, young fry, small bustling shoals of black pins that flick and dart among the weeds. And the carp, large and bovine, drift and hang suspended in the tobacco-coloured waters of the shallows, as damselflies flash and hawk through the sedge and reeds. The grasses beyond the hedges and field margins are getting a little parched now, but they're still growing, and each step gives rise to the soft wing brush of small butterflies and moths. In the morning and late evening, the waist-high grass fronds feel velvet soft and deliciously cool with the shadowed earth damp, when I plunge my hands deep into the green sanctuary of their shadowed refuge. As always, I love hearing from you, and thank you for taking the time and the trouble and effort to get in contact. And I had quite a few comments responding to the last podcast that looked at the fens. And it was really good to hear from our old friend of the podcast, Shambles. I was particularly interested in his observations. He wrote, "As an East Anglian myself, though not a Fenlander, I really enjoyed this episode. Being somewhere quite flat means we have big skies. I used to live by the sea as a child and into my teens. Many people love the sea, the sounds and the coast in general. But for me, it made me feel trapped, always at the end of the line, both metaphorically and literally in regards to the train." You know, my Shambles, I'd never really thought of it like that, but I could see how, yes, one could feel that way. I love the place I live now, being able to escape in any direction, and knowing I can lose myself in fields in a short time. I think that's why the canals appeal to me, a road that meanders in between the fields and towns and cities, ready for you to cast off again. I also love visiting Ely and seeing the cathedral, known as the Ship of the Fens, rise up from the land, standing above everything as far as the eye can see. Yeah, thank you so much. And I was also delighted that both Barry Woodhouse, also known as Barry in the Fens, and Mark Elvin, also known as Captain Bugwash, enjoyed the last episode too. And many thanks for your very kind words. And yes, you might be a little biased, Barry, but I think deservedly so. And yeah, I do think that you should start a campaign to change Welssoken. Is that the right pronunciation for it? To Welssoken All Saints, or even All Saints Welssoken. And actually, that's far easier to write than it is to say. Perhaps that's why it's not called that. And thank you also to John Bowman, who also sent a message thanking me for the episode and for including a mention of the Flag of the Fens campaign. It's my pleasure, John. And another old friend of the podcast, Sean Cameron, got in contact. Lovely to hear from you, Sean, and to hear that life is settling down for you again. Sean suggested setting up a playlist with all the readings from Mum's book in proper order. And yes, that's a really good idea. There is one of sorts if you click on the Start of It All tab on the noswpod.com website and then scroll down to the bottom of the page. However, I know it's not ideal, and it is something that's on my list of things to do, among with bringing that bookshelf page under a little bit more control when I have time. However, at the moment, I'm really only just keeping my head above water and getting the podcast out every other week. But it is on my radar, and I will get it done, so thank you, Sean. And over on YouTube, hello to Rebecca, and I hope you're enjoying your cuppa, John. And it was lovely to hear from Gabriella. And I'm glad you're enjoying the sound recordings that I've been trying to add. And yes, being solar powered is particularly amazing at this moment. And it was also lovely to hear back from Lee, who wrote a wonderfully vivid account of a recent camping trip that she took recently. But I'm going to leave it to Lee to tell it. Listening to the episode about the Fen country reminded me of how we each have a landscape that particularly speaks to us, and how I fell in love with the Colorado Rockies when I first visited on a car trip with my parents when I was 9, about 60 years ago. We had just moved from Hawaii, and although I liked it there, it was the mountains that immediately calmed my heart. We moved up there, quite near to where I'm living now, a couple of years later, and I have left only briefly since then. And I'm still living in my little starter house up here, and I intend for it to be my finishing house as well. Anyway, I just had to tell you about a couple of wildlife encounters that I had during my recent 3-night camping trip, an hour's drive up the road at 10,000 feet. I read that at least one of the handful of wolves that had been released in the northern part of the state had been tracked to the general area around where I was camping, a journey of about 150 miles. They've been reintroduced to the state during the last year or two, much to the delight and dismay of local ranchers. There are complex issues on both sides of the argument. Yeah, I know that, Lee. And the wolves are all wearing radio tracking collars. I did hope to hear a wolf howl during this camping trip, but never really expected to actually hear one. At about 2:30 in the morning, during my second night, I was awakened from a sound sleep by the sound of a wolf howl. It was absolutely unmistakable. I'll let you decide whether this was because of an atavistic memory or from watching nature documentaries on television. Oh, Lee, I think it's atavistic. I think it's deep within our DNA, that. Lee goes on. The howl was long and low, ending in almost a moan. It howled for a total of 4 times. And by the second howl was joined by what sounded like a big pack of coyotes coming from the other side of my camper, all yipping together. I imagine that the wolf was searching in vain for another wolf to be its mate, and the coyotes were doing their best to convince it to search elsewhere. The coyotes got the last word. It was probably a once-in-a-lifetime experience that I will always remember and treasure. The next day, I hiked up a closed-off jeep road to some isolated beaver ponds. When I got there, a large rabbit came bounding up to me, as if in playful curiosity, hopping away and then coming back ever closer. It even followed me when I moved on to the ponds. I'd never seen a rabbit that looked like it. It had huge feet, covered with long white hair cascading down in wide cone from its knees, rather like a Clydesdale horse. I realized after a while that I was looking at my first snowshoe hare, part way between its winter white colour phase and its summer grey and brown. This is an animal that lives at very high altitude in places with lots of snow, thus its snowshoe-like namesake feet. It was a very rare sight, and in its way as memorable as the wolf howls. Just as it was my first snowshoe hare, I'm sure from its curious behaviour that I was its first human being. Ah, how can I not love the Colorado Rockies? Oh, Lee, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. And also, Lee, I can relate totally to your struggle between keeping informed with the news and keeping your sanity. It is a really fine balancing act. And I think, though, the rule of thumb would be to always err on the side of your sanity. It really doesn't matter if you miss a bit of news, but your sanity and mental well-being is really precious. And finally, a big thank you to all of our Lockwheelers for supporting this podcast. They are Susan Baker, Mind Shambles, Clare Hollingsworth, Kevin B., Fleur and David Mcloughlin, Lois Raphael, Tania Yorgey, Andrea Hansen, Chris Hinds, David Dirom, Chris and Alan on the narrowboat The Land of Green Ginger, Captain Arlo, Rebecca Russell, Allison on the narrowboat Mukka, Derek and Pauline on Silver Fox, Anna V, Orange Cookie, Mary Keane, Tony Rutherford, Arabella Holzapfel, Rory with MJ and Kayla, the narrowboat Precious Jet, Steve, that engine is shining beautifully, Linda Reynolds Perkins, Richard Noble, Carol Ferguson, Tracy Thomas, Mark and Tricia Stowe, and Madeline Smith. Thank you. Things for me have been rather unsettled and consequently unsettling this week. I'd actually got something all lined up for this week's podcast, something that I've been working on and mulling over for, I think it must be well over a year, if not two. But that unsettling has got to me, and I just can't find that piece to finish it off. And I know that I must not be the only one to feel this way. After all, we are all living in very unsettling times. It can be difficult to know quite how to live in them. What should our response be? What is appropriate? What is right? And this week, this year hangs on the solstice high point of that seasonal arc. The still point. That one brief moment of stasis when the sun appears to pause on our skyline before the swing of seasons rushes back downwards and then back upward to the peak of the still point of winter solstice. The giddying rush between two poised points of weightlessness and free fall. There's something about swings, isn't there? Even now, honestly, on finding an old tire strung on a tree branch, or when visiting a deserted playground, who can resist that giddy rush of wind in your face, and that strange, almost itchy feeling in the pit of your stomach? And then, the little voice that whispers in your ear, dare you go a bit higher? Do you remember the swing boats at village or town fairs? Shuggy boats, they call them up north. Carnival painted in sweeping whorls of colour. And you climbed inside them and sat on the plain wooden seats opposite your sister or your brother or your friend, and you reached up to grab the thick coiled snake of rope. In your clenched fists they felt as thick as a ship's hawser. And you tugged and tugged like drunken bell ringers until the boat started rocking, and then higher and higher, giddying sickly with delight and excitement. Go, go, we'd shout as the clouds and skies seemed to slide under us, while at the same time, no, no, and each pendulum we'd wait with dread and excitement for the boat to go right over to loop the loop, so that Mum and Dad and all the fairground rides and stalls would rush in a blur beneath our heads. But of course that was impossible. Unlike some park swings, and the one that we had a little while in our back garden, these were designed not to loop the loop. But nevertheless, as we hurtled between that exquisitely terrifying moment when the world and the wind stopped and our bellies felt feather light and our eyes widened into saucers, nevertheless we told ourselves this one might go all the way. Yes, there is something about swings. Is it the pitched rush of wind and sound as you rush back towards the earth and then back up into the sky? Or is it that fragment of a moment of stillness when you are free, as weightless as a bird on the wing? Perhaps it's a bit of both. But I think personally, it is that still point, the top of the arc, the feeling of a void both inside and out. Oh yeah, the rush is all part of the excitement to get to that place. But the rush without that poised balance at the end of the arc, for me at least, would be nothing. I don't know what to call these points. One at each end of an arc. I thought there must be some fancy mathematical or scientific term for it, but apparently not. Disappointingly, geometrists tell me that they're simply called end points. Perhaps if we left the naming of geometric names to the astronomers, they would come up with something much better. Any community that can come up with azimuth, sidereal time, and obliquity of the ecliptic will get my vote any time. And so it's this illusion that each year, twice a year, we meet this still point, the utmost end of the arc's distance of travel in our annual journey around the sun, with all the mystery that is attached to that idea. The sudden silence, the sense of poise, stillness, and the brief moment of otherness, the breathless weightlessness of the unordinary, the passing instant when we slip from this world and become and experience something quite different, something outside our normal earth-based lives. And it is a special, exceptional type of stillness. Or is it silence or peace? It's not the stillness that derives from balance here. This is no equilibrium, a balance in the sense of the equinox, where light and dark equally share the day. This is the stillness that comes at the very, very edge of the tipping point, the edge of the precipice, teetering. And for this one grasped instant, we break free into the unordinary, hanging suspended at the very edge of our own earthy event horizon. Perhaps that's why I rather ridiculously look forward to these natural mileposts in the year, solstice. Ridiculous because I know this is all imagined. These points don't exist in physics, but nevertheless they do exist in experience. As I watch the sun's progress back and forward along the east and west of my horizons, we've pulled on that rope as hard as we can. This is as high as we'll go. Wait for it. That one instant of calm, when the natural order seems to dissolve away, and things that bind us to the ground are cut free, afloat in the eye of a hurricane. It's compelling, even if I know deep down it is illusory and based only from my single perspective. But then we could say that about most things and creeds, sacred and secular, scientific and economic, that we hold dear. So perhaps that is why this unease coming at this precise time is hitting me so hard. I don't know. Perhaps it's entirely due to other things. But all I know is that I am finding it hard to walk a balanced path, to stop the noise, to focus. These cardinal points in the year, and particularly the solstices, have for millennia functioned as stopping places, places to pause and reflect, to light the bonfires, pour out the beer, sing the tales of the songways of old, to create the dreamways that lead us into our futures, to tell the old stories for new times. And boy, do I feel that as a planet we need that right now. The still point above the plummeting precipice. But I also need to experience that individually as well. And right now, I'm finding it hard. Unsettled, diseased. That hushed, exhilarating moment of calm, the stillness at the end point, is fractured, disturbed. The waters become calm, and the surface mirrors, and then a wind lightly ruffles it, and the clouds blur and reflections deform, distort, and 101 unbidden, voiced and unvoiced thoughts clutter and jostle. Emails ping and pile up. A siren drowns out the robin's song. I've been working on this thing for well over a year, and I know exactly what I want to say. It's just finding the way to say it that's left to be found. This should be easy. It's the part I enjoy the most. It's fun. It's like relief. Letting words run through my fingers. Letting them play around my head and on the pages. Letting them run free and wild. Feeling them mould ideas in new ways. It never ends quite how I expect. But I like that. Walking into the dark. Writing into the night. And it should be easy. If I could just find some space, some silence, some quiet, settled place. But the wind ruffles the mirrored surface, and someone drops into the water a stone, and once more my mind turns in, disturbed, unsettled, going everywhere and nowhere. Have you been feeling that too? Finding yourself staring into space, captivated by this maelstrom of thoughts and unidentifiable feeling. Perhaps in some way, if we let them, our minds, or what is it? It's our psyche, our consciousness, our soul, whatever it is, perhaps it is in some way sensitive to the outer environments in which we live. And perhaps it's just that in some way, deep down, we know that there are deeper existential questions that are needing to be addressed. Whatever the case, this week particularly, I'm struggling to know how to deal with it all. We are living in uncertain times, in an uncertain world. And we're constantly being bombarded with bad news, real and constructed. So it should not be a surprise to find that this leaves us feeling unsettled, disturbed. And we pick our way through the chaos of noise, trying to find that pathless path amid the clamour, to look up, to find our pole star, to look across and connect with lives that have deeper roots than us, and a shady canopy that can shelter us. And so tonight, we hang poised at the end point of the sun's westward journey, on the longest day of the year, on a night of twilights, a night that never truly gets dark, unsettled at the still point of the year. We wait, breath-baited, for the plunge back down and the giddy rush of air. And tell you what, let's both grab that rope and pull it for all it's worth. Let's see if we can make our world spin. For you and I, we are the people who sit alone in the dark on a muggy summer night, when darkness doesn't fully come, and catch the glimpse of firefly dance and are entranced only to later find that the sparks of steel grinding against steel as a train clatters past. But it reminds us that we do live in a world in which fireflies exist. And if the sirens do drown out the robin's song, we have at least heard the robin sing. And if there are storm clouds gathering, growling on the western slopes of our sky, and our hearts shrink back, at least we know that when the thunder comes, we will find a new way to dance in the rain. And this time, right now, this feeling of uncertainty, being disturbed, unsettled, doesn't it strike you too as, well, rather amazing? Here I am, a grown man, approaching the final stages of my life, and finding that after 65 circles around a little star on the edge of a whirling galaxy, that I still don't know how to live it. That is rather incredible. I can become a child again. But this time, I know that it is a broken world. And as scary as that sometimes all feels, it sounds great too. I can try new stuff. Do you feel that too? Will you come with me? No one said this life would be easy, but let's make it wonderful, exhilarating, and fill it with something beautiful. And so that just leaves me to wish you a happy solstice night. A happy, rather blustery solstice night. I am very conscious that just beside me, the fender is creaking like mad, and I'm sure it's picking up. So if you can hear some strange type noises all the way through this podcast, then that's what it is. But we're on a boat. That's all part of the experience. So this is the narrowboat Erica, signing off on a windy solstice night and wishing you a very restful and peaceful night. Good night. Temperature outside 26 degrees, inside 27 degrees. Humidity 51%. Dew point 15 degrees. Wind direction south-southeast. Wind strength 15 miles per hour. Barometric pressure 1012.5, falling. Cloud cover 31%. Cloud ceiling none. Precipitation 0.21 millimeters. Moon phase 16.7%, waning crescent. Day length 16 hours 48 minutes. Sunset 21:33. Sky casting 4:44.